I hope that I'm audible enough. Can you hear me, Dr. Gabriel?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to yet another workshop with the Research Capacity Development Unit. And today's workshop is titled Writing Effective Cover Letters for Journal Submissions. My name is Coco Tavila, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Firstly, I would like to notify you that this session is being recorded. And I would also like to thank everybody for taking your time to join us today in this workshop. And most importantly, I would like to thank Dr. Gabriel Moniera for his effort with preparing and giving this presentation. So before I can officially introduce Dr. Gabriel to you, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules and some of the important information that we need to take note of. So for the housekeeping rules, if you do have questions during the presentation, you're more than welcome to raise your hand if you would like to speak. Alternatively, you can type your question on the chat box. I will then indicate to Dr. Gabriel to address your question. And also, as I have mentioned, that the session is being recorded and the presentation slides and the recording will be uploaded on our module communities before the end of the week. And also there will be a feedback survey that will be sent out on the chat during the presentation. Please, can you take some time to complete the feedback survey to provide some kind words to the facilitators. And this, completing the feedback survey also ensures that you get the certificate of attendance. And we urge you to use your correct details when you are completing the feedback survey so that we have the right information when we're generating the certificate of attendance. And also for those who have not yet registered on the Research Capacity Development Management System, please do so so that you can also have the system where we have everything tailored there in the system, in one system where you'll see the workshops, all the upcoming workshops and all the information, the events and the seminars that we'll be hosting. And just to also announce to everyone that we will be having the 3-minute thesis competition on the 29th of August. You're more than welcome to register as an online audience just to, see your fellow students presenting their work in the 3MT competition. And please look out for the flyer to register to become an online audience. We'll send it out. Please look out for that and please do register to become an online audience. Without any further ado, I will then introduce Dr. Gabriel, who will be facilitating today's session by reading out his bio. So Dr. Gabriel Moniera holds a PhD in Economic and Management Sciences with International Trade from Northwest University and is currently enrolled in the postgraduate diploma in research supervision at the University of Johannesburg with over a decade of teaching experience and a strong publication record. He has authored and co-authored book chapters and a number of articles in top-tier accredited peer-reviewed journals. He actively reviews for reputable journals and has received multiple awards for academic excellence. Dr. Moniera completed his postdoctoral research fellowship at the University of Johannesburg and currently serves as a research capacity development specialist at the postgraduate school, supporting the postgraduate students and researchers in academic writing and publication. His research interests include trade policy, export promotion, globalization, foreign direct investment, and regional integration in Africa, market accessibility measurements, and 4IR trade-related research. I will then hand over to Dr. Gabriel to proceed with the session. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Gabriel.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Pila, for the introduction. And I just want to also thank the participants for joining us for this session where we are gathering to, have a conversation on a seemingly, not important issue, but very important, writing effective cover letters for journal submissions. So I think if there are others who are amongst us who have published before, depending on the journal that you are submitting to, some of them might ask you to also provide a cover letter. But even if you're not asked to provide a cover letter, you can still also provide a cover letter. Hence, that's why I'm saying this is, some kind of an important issue that it's worth gathering to talk about. I've already been introduced. I'm Dr. Gabriel Monyera, and I'll be the one who will be facilitating the session for today. So this is just the outline of the presentation. I just want an expression from the participants, if you can hear me well, and also if you can see these slides that I'm going to share with you. So allow me to just share. I'm going to share the screen with you. If you can see it, kindly just indicate to me that you can see the screen and you can hear me well.
Yeah, we can see the presentation, Dr. Gabriel, and I see some thumbs up.
Okay.
Just to confirm that they can see.
All right, thank you. I also see some indication from the participants that they can hear me and they can also see the slides that I've shared with you. So this is the outline of my presentation. I will just give a bit of introduction for us to familiarize with ourselves with what is it, that we call cover letters, why are they important. Then I'll move on to the components of a cover letter, which is I think, the crux of this conversation, or the presentation that I'm going to make. And we'll also talk about the tone and style. And remember, when you're writing to a journal, to the editor, it's always very important for you to be respectful and use a tone, that is appropriate. Otherwise, your paper can be rejected without even being looked at. And so I'll provide sort of a symbol of a cover letter, just some kind of a write-up, of what is it that is expected when you write the cover letter up, and then some strategic tips before I move on to opening the floor for discussion, for what I call an open discussion, where we can just share our experiences. We can have ask questions and so on. But if you have a question during the course of the presentation, please just raise your virtual hand or type your question in the chat box, and I will stop to address the question. Then so let's now move on into the introductory part of the presentation, where I'm asking the question of what is it that we call a cover letter. So all these aspects that I've just sort of all these points that I'm making here, they all fit into the definition of what a cover page, what a cover letter is, right? So we are saying this is a sort of a professional or a formal letter that accompanies your manuscript submission. But like I've said, some journals ask you to provide a cover letter, but others they do not. But even if you're not asked, you can still provide a cover letter. So these are just some traits, so within the definition, we are labeling it as a professional or formal accompaniment, of your manuscript, when you submit the manuscript. So in a way, it acts as an official document that introduces the manuscript submission, right? In other words, you are sort of reflecting professionalism and also signaling that you understand the conventions of academic publishing. That's why I'm still stressing the point that even if you are not asked to provide a cover letter, you can still provide a cover letter, because it's an indicator of professionalism. It also signals that you understand the generally agreed conventions that are linked to academic publishing. It also introduces your work to the journal editor and sets the tone for the review process. So you're providing the editor with a clear and polite introduction of your work. In a way, you are trying to position the manuscript, to be considered as a serious and worthwhile contribution. Right. So, it's very important. It's very important that that level of seriousness, that impression of seriousness, the editor has to associate that with your manuscript. So it goes even into the manner in which the manuscript is submitted. That's why it's essential that a cover letter accompanies the manuscript. It also offers a concise summary of the research itself by briefly highlighting the core message, the objectives, and the key objectives, the key findings of your study. And most oftenly, the focus is placed on novelty or the originality of the work, the significance of the research, without you having to replicate the manuscript abstract. So don't be tempted to take the abstract, then you make it again. That will be the cover letter again. Of course, there are certain components or elements that overlap, that are also, supposed to be part of or make it into the cover letter, but don't replicate the abstract, right? So in a way, you are explaining concisely, in a synoptic way, or in a summary form. You are explaining why the study matters in advancing knowledge or practice in the field that you are sort of contributing to. So it's also a way of demonstrating, whether your manuscript fits the scope of the journal where you are submitting to. So it actually shows that you have carefully selected that particular journal based on its aims, the scope, and also the readership of that particular journal. All those elements that we use when we are choosing a journal, including also the issue of reputation, whether it's a reputable journal, whether it's a predatory journal. You can visit our Moodle communities for some of the resources that we have presented that speaks to those issues of how do you carefully select a journal, and also circumvent the issue of a predatory journal. So when you are demonstrating that the journal, your manuscript is fit for that particular journal, you increase the probability of your manuscript being considered for peer review rather than desk rejection. So this is where, after reading the cover letter, the editor can decide whether to proceed with your manuscript, like sort of considering it for peer review or not. So you also, if you do not demonstrate that the journal fit within the scope of your manuscript, fit within the scope of the journal, within the aims of the journal, the objectives of the journal, then you are risking desktop rejection. Right? It provides sort of essential administrative information as well. Right? So within the cover letter, you see that there are other, like maybe possibly the author information, like author names, affiliation, corresponding author, contact information. You also provide it within the cover. I'll show you an example of a cover letter that I've submitted before, so that you can also see some of these elements that we are talking about, also being part of the of a cover letter. Then also I provided sort of a template, some kind of a template or an example of how a cover letter should look like, including the wording when it includes the elements that we are going to discuss as the components of a cover letter. So for administrative purposes, the cover letter with information like author names, affiliation, corresponding author details can be drawn from that, can be harvested from the cover letter itself. And also it provides statements on ethical approvals, funding acknowledgements, and potential conflicts of interest. So, in other words, it clarifies whether the manuscript or the related work is under review as well elsewhere, to avoid issues of duplication as well. So all that administrative information can be harvested or can be drawn from the cover letter. See it as well as a first communication and engagement that you are making with the editor or the editors of with the editors. So in a way, you are sort of making a first communication, which in actual fact is an opportunity for you to engage the editor's interest in publication of the considering the manuscript for publication. So in other words, we are saying the cover letter represents your first direct engagement with the journal editor. So it gives you the chance to emphasize the importance and the timeliness of your research, encouraging the editor to view it favorably. Okay. So if maybe possibly if permitted, because some journals can sort of prescribe the elements that they want that should be covered within the within the cover letter. But if it's permitted, you can also suggest potential reviewers as well, or indicate the reviewers to avoid providing input into the peer review process. So you can suggest that you suggest, but don't say these are the reviewers that must review my work. But some journals, they even also ask you to, as part of the submission process, to sort of suggest the reviewers. It doesn't mean that if you suggest the reviewers, those are the reviewers that will be contacted to review your work. But that's also it's for the editor to be able also to consider, because remember, some other peers and other scholars within your work who can also, who are experts, maybe possibly within the line of study, or the sort of the that particular topic that you are writing on. But let me just confess that this is it's tempting for you to choose people that you know. It's that biasness, it's difficult to really deal with that biasness. I've also submitted before where at first, at one time I just had to go on the internet, just find other people randomly, find other people. But sometimes maybe the people that you suggest, some of them might even refuse to review the paper for you, because then you end up maybe choosing to look for, to suggest people that so really, but I don't really see people, it's done across the scholarly community, but I wouldn't it's not something that I would advise, that choose people that and sometimes others even go to the extent of communicating with the people, letting you know that if you see a paper like this, you must know that it came from me. So those are all unethical academic and the publication conduct. So the peer review will be, at the end, the process will be sort of a biased process. Why are they important? Why are the cover letters important? So I think some of the elements I've already discussed, some of the elements already, and pointed that it is it's a role, it's sort of a crucial role that it plays in the submission process, that you undertake. And you can see that the manuscript itself, it carries the main scientific contribution, but the cover letter, it will serve as the editor's first point of engagement, right, with your research. So is the abstract as well, because the abstract, that's also a first point of entry into your paper that the editor considers, right? So if you write a cover letter that is strong, that is well structured, that can actually influence whether your work progressed to peer review or it's rejected, on desktop, a desktop review stage. So these are just some important reasons why, we have to take this issue of drafting as well as having cover letters accompany our manuscripts very important, right? It helps the editors prioritize submissions. It's not only you who is submitting to the journal. So you can see that journal, editors, they receive hundreds of manuscripts, a lot of manuscripts. Often those manuscripts are actually competing for a limited publication space within the journal. So in a way, if your cover letter is clear, it's compelling, it will assist your submission to stand out and signal that your work, it deserves the attention from the editor. So it also highlights the novelty and relevance, right? It's an opportunity for you to briefly explain what your research, what's unique about your research, that my research is timely, it's impactful, it's worth to be considered for publication. So remember, journals, they look at novelty, they look at originality of your work, right? They don't want to reproduce what is already there. They want something that is contributing meaningfully to the scope of the journal, to the aims, to the objectives of the journal, and to the field in general. It also demonstrates journal fit as well. I've spoken about that. So the editors, they want to ensure that the submissions, they align with the journal scopes, with the themes of the journal, and also with the readership of the journal. So if your cover letter is a good cover letter, it must show that you have carefully chosen the journal and you can articulate how your work can contribute to the mission of that particular journal. Like I'm saying, this issue of cover letter, it's something that we might feel that it's not worth talking about because it's just a one page at the end of the day. In one page, you should be able to have written your letter and communicated all these aspects that I'm talking about. You shouldn't be writing a letter of 3 pages or more than that. But this is it's something that is very, very, though seemingly look like it's a trivial thing, but it's actually very, very significant and also contributes to the success of your work in being considered for publication and eventually being published. So it showcases professionalism as well and attention to detail. So if it's a well-polished, a well-written cover letter, it reflects the quality and seriousness of your work, which is a very important aspect that the reviewers check, right? Seriousness of your work. So it signals respect to the editor's time and that you understand the conventions. I've already mentioned that the conventions, the publishing conventions, and in a way you are creating a positive impression about yourself as the author or as the submitter of the paper, and also the work that you would have submitted. That is the subject of that particular submissions. So there's issue of clarifying as well if there are any special considerations as well. So we are looking at issues of you are sometimes allowed to provide context that may not fit within the manuscript itself, like the issues that include to ethical approvals, funding acknowledgements, conflict of interest disclosures, related manuscripts, if there are any related manuscripts. Remember, your work might be part of a broader project where you have to indicate that, okay, this is the third manuscript maybe for this particular project, and it's related to these articles that have already been published. Issues of data availability, you can provide data availability statements as well within the cover letter. So in a way, it actually plays a very, very significant role in the editor's initial screening decision, and thereby influencing the initial screening decision that the editor make. And for that, we must also note that many manuscripts, they are actually rejected at the desk review stage or desktop review stage, or we just call it desk or desktop. But remember, the editor will open maybe possibly your manuscript. If it's opened in digital form, then we can label it as a desktop. When in physical form, then we call it a desk. But that part where the editors looking at your manuscript to consider it for peer review, to take it out for peer review, that is the desk review stage that I'm talking about. Some papers, they do not even reach the external peer review part, right? But if you are having a cover letter that is with a clear, a well-argued cover letter, that can actually help to persuade the editor that your work, it's worthwhile to look at and to also to further evaluate it, right? So in other words, in essence, I'm saying a cover letter is more than just a formality that one has to do. It is, look at it as a strategic communication tool that frames your manuscript, engage the editor, and increase the likelihood of your paper or the probability of your paper advancing in the peer review process. Right. Let's look at the components of a cover letter. So these are the essential components of a cover letter. We have the salutation, the manuscript details, a brief summary, significance and novelty of the start, the fit with the journal, that is whether your paper aligns with the scope of the journal, with the aims and objectives of the journal, with the mission of the journal. Then we have declarations, the reviewer suggestions, and you can close it. So the salutation, so we are talking about the sort of a personalized greeting. If you know the editor, if I'm the editor, dear Dr. Monyera, directly. So a personalized greeting. But if you don't know that I'm the editor, then you can just say, dear editor. Then you can, continue, or maybe dear editor in chief, depending on the title that is given. So you have to address the letter, like as I'm mentioning, either to the editor in chief, or to the editor, or if you know, then by name, dear Professor Smith, dear Professor this. So in a way, you are demonstrating professionalism and showing that you have taken the time to identify the responsible person, so that to whom it may concern, those, they really don't work out well for you, or dear sir or madam, that doesn't really work very well for one. So it is important that you take time to identify who is the editor of that particular journal. So that also shows a level of professionalism, so if you don't have a personalized, then you can make a generic greeting, like I've said. If there's no name that is available, dear editor, to the editorial team, but always a personalized greeting is preferred. A personalized greeting is actually
Dr. Gabriel, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pila. I think the last time we were together, it was on the manuscript details. So I've just talked about the salutation and say a personalized greeting. It's more preferred than a generic greeting, right? So those DSA or madam, they are not really that much preferred, or saying to whom it may concern. So let me move on now to the manuscript details. So there now you provide the title of the manuscript, and when you provide the title of the manuscript, you must provide the exact title as it appears in the submission. So don't provide two titles. One in the submission, then when you are now writing the cover letter, then it's another title. So it must be exactly as it appears. Then within the manuscript details as well, you have to provide the type of article. You have to specify whether it is an original research, it's a review article, it's a short communication, is it a case study, is it a perspective, is it a methodological note, what is it? So in terms of the type of the article, then you have to talk about authorship as well, but that is optional. You can list the corresponding author and co-authors, especially if there's a large research team, right? So it's important as well, but optional. Then the journal details as well. You have to mention the full name of the journal to avoid any ambiguity. And so you have to mention the full name. It's very even important if the publisher manages multiple journals. So you have to be specific that you are writing to the editor. I'm writing to you for consideration of my manuscript for publication in the Journal of African Trade, for example. So you have to be specific about the journal details as well. Then from the manuscript details, you move on to a brief summary of the work itself, where you provide a concise, it shouldn't be paragraphs. So just concisely 1 to 2 sentence overview of the research topic and objectives. So where you are simply highlighting the main findings or outcomes without having to repeat the full abstract, So it's very important providing a brief, sort of a background or an overview of the research topic or objectives. Then you also highlight the main findings or outcomes without repeating the full abstract. Then we also have where we look at the significance or the novelty of the study, where you must explain what is unique or innovative about your study. Why does it stand out of the rest? What makes it so distinct that it must be considered whilst others are being rejected? That is actually important. So in a way, you must indicate how your study contributes to advancing knowledge or filling a gap in the literature. You also have to highlight the practical and theoretical or methodological contributions that you would have made explicitly. Don't let the editor hunt for your contribution in the text. No, it must be there, explicitly stated, that the contribution that this article makes or this paper makes, then you have to state it. All right. Then the issue of the scope. When you talk about fit with the journal, we are talking about the scope, the alignment of your manuscript with the scope or aims and the readership of the journal. So you have to clarify why your manuscript belongs in this journal. You see. So, like as an example, I can say maybe we are looking at the issue of audience relevance, alignment with current themes, or contribution to ongoing debates. That aligns with the publication history of that particular journal. So then we have the declarations where we are now looking at the things like the conflict of interest. For example, where you have to clearly state whether yourself or the co-authors have any conflicts of interest. If you do not have, then usually they just say the authors declare that they have no conflicts of interest. So some journals they give you within their author guidelines, they give you that you have to provide those the conflicts or anything that you have to provide at the end, like conflict of interest, issues of funding resources, or the declarations that we have made. So in terms of funding resources, we are simply talking about the acknowledgement of financial support if it's applicable to your study and any funding agencies. That has to be declared, as well as ethical approval, where especially for those studies that are involving humans or animal. You have to confirm compliance with ethical standards and institutional approval. You even have to provide the ethics number, so that the study provided ethical clearance, from the University of Johannesburg Faculty of Humanities Ethics Committee, and then you include the ethics clearance number and so on. So a statement, an ethical approval statement has to be provided. So that actually reassures the editor of the integrity of your study and transparency, right? Then we have the reviewer suggestions. If the journal permits you to do that, then you can suggest reviewers. You provide names, you provide affiliations, email address of the experts in the field who could review the work. So in other words, ideally, you're just suggesting the reviewers who are not close collaborators to your work. And some journals where you are given an opportunity to do that, there's also other limitations that are linked to that. And those limitations include that they don't permit the suggested reviewers to also be part of the institution that you are affiliated with. That is one. Sometimes, okay, the one of giving to people that that one, they cannot control that, but it's just not a good practice. The process should not be a biased process. Then the ones that normally, from my experience, from where I've submitted before, where they asked me for suggestions of reviewers, they also ask you for excluded reviewers as well. Let's say maybe there are certain reviewers that you don't want them to review your work, but I've never really, I don't know if there are others who do that, but I've never provided any reviewer that I say, I don't want this person to look at my work. But I don't know, like maybe we can share during the open discussion segment if you have done so, and what was the motive for that. I don't have enemies yet, in the field that I can say I don't want someone to look at my work. But that is it's a possibility, and they allow you to do that. So there you list any sort of if there are any potential conflicts. For example, if there are competitors, collaborators, or previous supervisors, that you may request that certain individuals not be approached. That is also with a professional justification. So remember, that is also for besides it looking at it as if maybe you are against someone. We also have to look at that from the perspective of trying to avoid biasness as well. Because if I know that is my friend, and my friend can also be approached, he's in the same field and can also be approached, I can suggest to say, don't approach this person, right? Then you offer your closing remarks where you politely request for consideration. Like politely, like for example, we respectfully submit this manuscript for consideration for publication in the Journal of Business and Economics. We believe it will be of interest to your readership, right? You offer gratitude. You thank the editor for their time and consideration. You provide your contact information. Provide you the corresponding author's full name, institutional affiliation, mailing address, phone number, and also and the email. And then you also have to indicate if you were writing the letter on behalf of everyone. Remember, don't write it like only if you have co-authors, then you write it like it's only for you. You write it for everyone. I'm writing to you on behalf of my co-authors, and also then you proceed with that kind of then just also other things that are important is to keep the letter brief. Like I've said, one page maximum. I've gone over one page, but maybe it's just the salutation that goes over to the other page. But try to keep it as minimal as possible. One page should be the maximum. And the issue of maintaining a very, very professional, informal tone. So you don't have to just copy and paste the abstract. You must highlight the relevance and value of the work that is currently, the subject of the submission. And it's important for you to proofread carefully for grammar and spelling errors. Because grammatical errors, violation of language conventions in the cover letter, that will work against you. Right? So it's important.
Dr. Gabriel,
yes.
Can I just interject? Because I think the question that is asked is relevant to this particular slide that you're in. So there's a question on the chat that says, can you repeat the explanation under manuscript details and brief summary for clarification purpose, please?
Under manuscript details.
Yes, manuscript details and brief summary.
Okay, the brief summary of the work. So when I was talking about manuscript details, these are details like the title of the manuscript, right? The type of the article, the authorship, and the journal details. So those are part of the manuscript details. So in terms of the title of the manuscript, I said you must provide the full title the same way that you have provided in the manuscript that you have submitted. Right? Because we are it's the cover letter. So within the cover letter, you must provide the title of the manuscript itself. Then also remember, this is the body of the writing already. You are writing the letter, but you also provide that. We'll look at the ways as we proceed. When I give some examples, we will show how that fit into the letter. So it's the title of the manuscript as it appears on your submission, the type of the article, whether is it an original research, is it a review article. So I'm submitting our review article for publication consideration in the journal of this and that, right? That kind of. Then the authorship, it's optional. Like authorship, I said it's optional because you can list the corresponding author. You can also list co-authors, but that is usually appropriate if the research team is large. Right? Then the journal details, where you mention the full journal name as well to avoid any ambiguity. That's why I said, you say, okay, for our manuscript to be considered in the journal of business and economics. So you have to be specific about the journal, right? So the brief summary now, this relates to the contents of your study, So where you are summarizing briefly, sort of an overview of the research topic and objectives of your manuscript or of your paper or of your study that you are doing. Then you also highlight the main findings or outcomes, but you don't have to replicate what you have written in the abstract, right? In a way. So maybe giving it as an example, you are saying maybe in this study we investigated the role of differentiated service delivery models in improving HIV treatment, that kind of that. Our results show the significant improvements in this and that, that is the kind of wording that I'm talking about, right? So when you talk about so that is it about. So the summary relates to the work that you are doing, to the study that you are doing. Then the details relates to those details of your manuscript, like the title, the type of article, authorship, and the journal details, right? Then I think that is answered, Ms. Pilar. Let me, I can now proceed to the tone and style, of that you can use in the cover letter. So I'm going to just provide some tips in terms of the tone. It's important that you maintain a professional tone, and you have to be cautious You also have to be formal throughout, right? So this is where you use respectful and polite phrasing. Like, for example, we are pleased to submit our manuscript for consideration, rather than maybe possibly saying we are super excited to share our work. So the kind of language, to don't be appear as if you are being mean, or so you have to avoid slang, idioms or casual phrasing that might appear unprofessional, right? Then you also have to be concise. Like I've said, the maximum should be 1 page. So the editors and reviewers, they you must be cognizant of that. They handle a lot of submissions, and though the issue of brevity or length, it's very, very important for them. So you have to focus on what is essential. So that is the manuscript details, the significance, the alignment of your manuscript with the journal, and also if there are any required declarations that you can make. Right. So in other words, the cover letter, it should complement and not repeat the abstract. Right. You also have to be sort of use clear, straightforward language, avoiding jargon and overly technical terms. So you have to those overly complex sentences, you have jargon, discipline specific shorthand that may not be familiar with the editor. You have to avoid that. Then also you have to know that you are also writing for an educated but broad academic audience, where editors, they are often not specialists in everything, maybe within the field or in other subfields. Remember, we are not jack of all trades, we know, but we don't know everything, right? So you must be cognizant of that. Then the issue of focus. So you have to focus on the strength of the manuscript without exaggeration or unsupported claims. So here we are talking about the issue of highlighting the what's novel or what's original, what is it that is distinct, that they are doing within your paper. So you focus on novelty, you focus on impact, you also focus on relevance, but you have to do it factually. You have to do it factually. You mustn't be sort of exaggerating or providing claims that are unsupported. So that is very, very important. So I've seen a lot of times, you can see maybe people who say maybe possibly instead of saying the study provides the first comparative analysis, but instead they can say maybe this groundbreaking revolutionary study proves once and for all. Once and for all, that's not really the kind of terminology that one would be expected. So there are people who are very, very overly sort of they exaggerate. The start is very important, so let the editor see the importance. Yours is to demonstrate the importance, and it's for the reader and for us to see, to judge how important the research is. Then avoiding the overly use of casual expressions or emotional language as well. That's also another factor where you do not have to use maybe phrases like we worked really hard on this, we hope you love it. You have to keep the tone neutral and fact-based, emphasizing evidence rather than emotions. You don't make the editor to feel sorry for you, to consider the paper for publication because they feel sorry for you. So that's not the aim. Proofreading is very important. So you have to proofread carefully for grammar, spelling, and punctuation to ensure that your manuscript is credible. So even if the manuscript itself is very, very strong, you still have to do that, because remember, if you have errors in the cover letter, they may create an impression of carelessness, irresponsibility, and lack of professionalism. So you have to guard against that. So it's important that you double check authors' names, manuscript title, the journal name. So if you get this wrong, that can undermine the credibility of the work that you are doing. Then also the customizing the letter for each submission as well. So if you have created, because usually we just create one letter, then that letter we use it. We just use it maybe for submissions, different submissions. But there are certain elements that you have to change, like journal name, referring to the scope of or the leadership of the journal, and showing also awareness of its aim. So you have to avoid to just copy and paste the templates that are generic and impersonal. So don't write. You have to. It must show some kind of customization to the journal itself that you are submitting to. And so it's a, if you just adapt a letter or you reuse it, then some editors, they can quickly see that. So you don't have to show the editor that you have just adapted sort of a template, or you just adapted another letter that you sent before. You can even make mistakes of leaving some details of the other journal within the current letter that you are providing. So here is just a sort of a sample of a cover letter, right? So there, opening, greeting, the tone that you can use, maybe dear doctor, then preferably if you have the information. But if you don't have, then you can make it generic. You can just say maybe dear the editorial team, or dear editor, or dear chief editor, that kind of. But in the introduction, the manuscript title must be there, the article type, a brief research context as well must be provided. So these are elements that I've already discussed that I'm just providing a synopsis for here. Key findings, summarizing the main results and why they matter, right? But remember, these summaries are very brief. These are very, very brief. You are limited. You have one page to sort of a limitation of one page. You should have presented all these key elements, within that one page. Then the alignment with the scope of the journal, how your paper complements the journal's focus and audience, declarations, conflicts of interest, funding, ethics, approval, reviewer suggestions, which are optional. Then also provide rationale as well, especially when you don't want certain reviewers to be excluded from the review process. Then a closing where you are now, thanking the editor for considering your manuscript for submission, your manuscript submission for publication, and also mentioning that they should not be hesitant to contact you if they need any additional information. So please contact me if you require any additional information. It's important. Then you then sign off with your email signature, your name, your affiliation, your contact details, just like you do on emails. So you have also to sign off there. So this is just a sort of so besides these elements, this is just an example of sort of a cover letter. I'm hoping that you can see that, but I can also read it in your hearing, because I've tried to just put everything there. It's showing dear doctor. Then you put maybe if you have the details of the editor. I'm pleased. So like I said, you must take time to try to research who the editor is. It's very important to know that, okay, you have taken time to know more about the journal. You are really sure that this is the journal that you have chosen amongst others, that it aligns with the research that you are doing. So you salute dear doctor, or generic dear editor, or dear editorial team, or chief editor. You put usually the last name, dear doctor. Don't say Dr. Gabriel Monyera, dear Dr. Monyera. It's more sort of pleasing than maybe when the name is mentioned. I'm not saying it's pleasing for me. Me, I don't mind. I don't mind. But for submissions, because you don't know who you are submitting to, so you don't have sort of a personal relationship. So just have to avoid that. I'm pleased to submit our manuscript entitled. Then you put the title for consideration as a. Then you put the type of the article, right? As an original research, for example. Then you put the journal name in the Journal of Business and Economics. The start address is, then you briefly describe the research context, 1 to 2 sentences in that. Then in another paragraph, our findings indicate that, it can be a continuation of what you're doing there, but I just separated it so that you can see. So depending on when you're writing, if you're a good writer, it will tell you that, okay, here I have to put, it should be a new paragraph, because that is a sort of a progression, but a new idea being introduced. So you can choose whether to make it a paragraph or not, depending on the way or the wording that you would have used and how it flows, the ideas flow. So our findings indicate that. Then you summarize the main results in 1 or 2 sentences. These results are important because you explain briefly why they matter and how they advance knowledge or practice in the field. We believe this manuscript is a strong fit for the journal, or you put the name of the journal as it aligns with the journal scope and readership, particularly in the areas of. Then you provide some specific themes or topics. We confirm that there are no conflicts of interest associated with this work. The study received funding from, then you provide sources if they are there, funding sources if applicable, and ethical approval was obtained from, then you provide the institution and the ethics committee or the ethics committee, including the ethics clearance number as well. Then it's also important that you confirm that the manuscript has also not been submitted elsewhere else and is not under review anywhere. Right, so you can also do that in the confirmation there. If permitted, we respectively suggest the following reviewers. If it permits you to suggest reviewers, but even if they did not tell you whether they allowed that or not, then you can use the wording like if permitted. Then you can provide names, affiliations, and email addresses. They are important, and also a short rationale or reason why you are suggesting them. So we also request that then you can provide if there are any names for those reviewers that you don't want it to be considered. If you don't have, then you don't have to write about that. But you must also, provide a reason. So maybe for the request that the following reviewers, then you can put them not be considered as reviewers due to conflict of interest or any other valid reason that you can provide. Then you can close by thanking the editor for the time. So thank you for considering my submission, or thank you for your time and consideration. Please do not hesitate to contact me if further information is required. Sincerely, you provide your name, institutional affiliation, your email address, all those details that they can use to contact you if there's a need for the editor or the one that you are addressing to contact you. So you must also look at the use of words sincerely, yours faithfully, and so on. When you are writing, those they mean, there's a different meaning that is associated to when you are using these salutations as well. So when you are signing off by saying maybe yours faithfully, and saying yours sincerely, so you must research on that, which one is more appropriate for the context that you are talking. When you say suppose there are others that shows that maybe you know the person, or you have had a personal encounter with the person before, and so on. Then this is just an example. I wrote this one. This was mine. I put my name, I put my address, and so on. My contact details, I put my email, then I address 1 November 2022. I didn't know the editor, so I said the editor, Journal of Shipping and Trade. I put a reference, submission of manuscript for publication consideration, DSA or METM, because I didn't know who the editor is. I'm writing to you on behalf of my co-author to express our interest in having our manuscript titled. Then I put it, the title, considered for publication in the Journal of Shipping and Trade. We can confirm that the submitted manuscript has not been published elsewhere and is not currently under consideration for publication elsewhere. In this manuscript, we investigate the effect of this, then I provide all that. I also include, okay, so to try to put the importance is there. While there is a scarcity of literature investigating the effect of a free trade area on export efficiency in COMESA, the link between the sources of trade growth within COMESA are also not well documented. Accordingly, examining this link in COMESA is fundamental in generating export growth for each respective member state through improvements in trade efficient gains. So we have no conflict of interest to disclose, and please address all correspondence concerning this manuscript to me at the following email address. Then I provide my address. I thank you for taking your time to consider this manuscript. Yours faithfully, Dr. Gabriel Monyera. Then I indicated. So that was 2022. It was published in this paper. They considered it. It went for review. It was successful, and it was published. So just an example of writing cover letter. So don't just go on ChatGPT, then you say write a cover letter for this and all that. Of course, it can assist you to do that, but you have to go on and put the finer details yourself. I don't even think 2022, I didn't even know about ChatGPT at this time. And so I just wrote it like myself, according to possibly some guidelines that I was getting online and so on how is it written. So lucky you have me to talk about this topic to you so that when you are doing it, you know what is it that you are doing. Is it Colette Bronwyn? You can unmute yourself. I've allowed your mic. You can unmute and talk. If it's a question, you can ask. Colette, I see your hand. Your virtual hand is up. Okay, I will lower the hand, assuming that maybe it was just okay. I can.
Okay, Dr. Gabriel, while we're waiting for Colette to speak,
I think she's speaking, but I allowed her mic. She must unmute herself first. Colette, unmute yourself first, then you talk.
Sorry, it was a mistake. My apologies.
Okay. Oh, all right. Thank you. Ms. Pila, you can go.
Okay, Dr. Gabriel, yes, well, we hear also before we move on. There are also some comments from Tafadzwa, who I think it's also relevant for the part that we are in right now. Firstly, it's a comment that says it's hard to actually convey confidence without sounding arrogant. And then I don't know if these questions were actually answered on the sample that you gave, but I'll just go ahead and mention the questions anyway.
Okay.
And then the question says, should I explicitly state why I chose this journal and how detailed should that justification be? That's the first question. And then the second one says, should authors disclose limitations of the study in the cover letter or only focus on strength?
I will start with the first with the first part of the question. Let me just also go on the chat box myself and just be able to address the questions well. Okay, the first, it's hard to actually convey confidence without sounding arrogant. No, but you can do that. You can. It's your choice of wording. It's your choice of. You have to choose your words carefully. That's why I said your tone should always be professional. So remember, arrogance comes from issues like over exaggeration and so on. So those are some of the aspects that I'm also trying to address, as we move on and give some examples of what do I mean when when I mention such. So it's important that you choose be polite. Be polite, even those we do it a lot of saying the start is very important in this and this. It's not really a good thing to do that, because you are overly sort of, it might be important, but let the person who is reading judge whether is it important or is it not important, or there's no one who have done this. This is groundbreaking, So such kind of language, it's not really a very kind of a professional tone to use. And okay, so it's an issue of choosing your words carefully and being polite in your writing. Then the other question is that, should I explicitly state why I chose this journal? Yes, that is important. You can explicitly state that the journal fit. That is that part where I was talking about that for consideration in this journal. Then you specify it explicitly. Then you go on to say, we think that our paper fit the scope of the journal, particularly. Then you can include other themes within the journal that that this fits. It fits with this scope, or it fits with this theme, because under the scope there are themes that are there that they are covering. So you be specific. That is very important, especially if the publisher has many other journals that they are. Many other titles that are under their sleeve, or their where that they publish on. Then limitations. I've never included limitations because I just don't wanna already. I suggest don't include them. I suggest don't include them. You don't want to point out you want to try to. Of course, it can be seen as a noble practice as well. It can be seen as something that is good, but I'm actually of the opinion that can also work against you as well, because already you're pointing issues. You start by pointing issues. You already, before I even. That's why even when you're writing, you talk about limitations at the end, and the limitations should be there to inform future research, right? And it should be limitations that are acceptable and reasonable. So I'm thinking that no, don't include. My suggestion is that don't include limitations. All right, no, thank you. I think okay. I've seen some communication from Tafaz. All right, so no, let me. I can proceed now. I think the questions were answered. I see from Petrol, Prof should share the sample later with us since it is not clear from the presentation. I will do that because we will share the slides with you. So the letters are there in the slides. So I've just provided a generic, sort of a generic that you can also use as a template of the kind of wording and so on, and what is expected to be included. But then I've also just provided my own letter. That where I send to a journal. It's a good journal. I think it's in Scopus, that journal. It's published by Taylor and Francis, if I'm not mistaken. It's also a good journal, the Journal of Shipping and Trade. I co-authored with a friend the paper, and we submitted it there, and it was successful and published. So I'm just sharing one of my letters. I have not, from my experience on the articles that I've written, I've submitted a cover letter, I think maybe twice, where I've been asked specifically to say provide the cover letter. But I've also written with a friend that I normally sometimes co-author with. Whenever he submits, he provides a cover letter. So like I've been stressing, it's actually important for you to do whether you're asked to do it or not. So providing a cover letter, it's a good way of trying to sort of argue for your paper to be considered for publication, doing it politely. So you will get these letters as well when we share the slides with you. Then let's just move on, to some strategic tips where we look at some common mistakes that you have to avoid. So for example, these are things that I've been talking about already. I see, okay, before I begin with this section, let me address the end of Molepo. Molepo, I allowed your mic. Unmute and you can ask.
Oh, yeah. Before we continue, just to go back on the cover letter, if
Okay.
let's say it's part of the article or the manuscript is part of your, let's say, your thesis or your dissertation, do you also outline that in your cover letter?
Yes,
don't
those
have
are
to-
related publications. Remember, your thesis, when it's in the repository of the library, it's already published, right? But I've seen a lot of confusion on whether one can write from his thesis or not, or from his or her thesis or not. I've written from mine, and in some cases I don't even change. I don't even pause. Remember, I believe that the first expression, that is the way I can really express myself fully. So trying to change the wording of my work that I've already done, it doesn't really sync well with me. I feel like it undermines the quality of the work that I've done, right? But let me, from my experience, I have published from my thesis some of the stuff, maybe even word for word, right? But there are journals that permit you to sort of generate papers from the contents of your thesis or your dissertation. Then they link it to that, right? I've published with SAGEMS, South Africa Journal of Economic and Management Sciences, Economic and Management Sciences, SAGEMS. SAGEMS, the moment I submit it on Turnitin, because they have their own sort of similarity check tools that they use, right? I've published successfully in a number of journals that check similarity. There are some that don't check, but some of them they check, right? So for those that check, like for SAGEMS, for example, when they noticed that there's a higher percentage, they checked where the percentage is coming from. Then they saw that it's linked to my thesis that is in the repository of Northwest University, right? So then they wrote to me that they see a high similarity emanating. I think it was almost 60% or so. So meaning that 60% of the work originated from the thesis. So some journals can tell you a percentage that is acceptable for them, right? But then they sent me a form that I had to fill to show that, to declare that this work is coming from my thesis, right? So there are many journals that do that, but you have to choose journals that allow you to publish sometimes without even changing what you had written originally. So what is not allowed is just for you to now make it as if the work is new, but yet you know that there's already existing work that is there in access, sort of that can access the publicly, right? So that will now constitute an element of self-plagiarism, right? Where sort of it's like if there is any publications that are linked to the one, you have to express that. If you borrow from any other publication that you have already received credit for before, then you also have to include that as well in the cover letter as well. So you must show that, okay, this is linked to this project, or this is a third paper in a series of papers on this particular project. Kind of. I'm hoping that that question is answered.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
all right,
it is.
thank you. Okay,
Thank
let
you.
me then just proceed with these common mistakes that you need to avoid. So these are some of the things that we've already been talking about. So we spoke about using a generic letter that does not mention the journal or editor's name. You can create your own templates. But remember, not every time you have to submit to a journal, then you have to start typing again. So you can have, there are certain things that are generic, but remember, the essence of the paper itself, of the manuscript itself, in terms of contents, it will differ. So you have to change all that, all those parts. And like I said already before, that editors, they can notice if a letter is copied and pasted without tailoring it specifically to their journals. When you write papers as well, it's a very important practice to include some references in your citations, some references that are within the journal that you are targeting, of papers published by that journal. So that is sort of that demonstrates alignment with their scope, right? Some journals, they reject your paper because you did not even mention any one paper from their journal. It's a common practice. They also want to boost their sort of citation rates and so on. So they ask you to say, some they will suggest that include also these papers from our journal. But that practice on its own of including papers, it shows that you are saying you have already published these papers that are within a similar frame in terms of the topic, and which sort of speaks for or indicates that your manuscript aligns with the scope of the journal itself. So you should not also remember all those issues of always personalizing, the address. If it's there, you have to also mention the journal explicitly. It's important. Then you don't have to forget to include the manuscript title and the article type as well. It's important that they must know. Because remember, they have not even gone to your submission. They are just reading this so that they can decide whether even to download the submission itself and further look at it. So it's important that you make it possible for the editor to immediately get clarity on what kind of paper is being submitted, right? But if you omit the information, the letter becomes sort of incomplete as well as unprofessional. Right. So it's important that you state the title of the manuscript, article type, and all those other, sort of details, manuscript details that I've been talking about. Then the issue of being vague about the novelty and significance of the research. It's not, you do not say by simply just say our study is important without giving any evidence that it's important. That is considered weak. It's a weak significance, right? So you have to provide the evidence. Why is it important? So you don't have to be vague. In other words, you have to briefly highlight what is new, what is unique, what is impactful about the findings that you got. It's very very important, including even all those issues of saying that this is the first time this has been done. Your wording as well, your tone, you have to tone it down a bit, because you cannot clearly state with certainty that is only the first time that has been done, because you don't have the capacity to search everything. Then the issue of ignoring or not following journal specific instructions for cover letters as well. So some journals will give you guidelines of what they want to be included in the cover letter, including issues of reviewer suggestions, data availability, and declarations. So all that you also have to it's important that you do not have to ignore that. So it's important that you look at the author guidelines as well. What is it that they are supposed to do when they are writing up, including this information that relates to cover letters as well, because it's usually contained in the author guidelines. So if you fail to comply, then you might sort of delay the review, or give a poor impression of yourself and the work that you are submitting. So it's important for you to read the submission guidelines very carefully, or the author guidelines very, very carefully. So the issue of also including irrelevant information, or you provide excessive detail that is unrelated to the manuscript. So in other words, you don't provide a full CV, So you end up providing a CV, career background, personal stories, all those issues, they shouldn't be in the cover letter. So you must only emphasize the manuscript relevance, findings, and how it aligns with the scope of the journal. If you provide too much unnecessary information, that would distract from the main purpose of the cover letter itself. To speak for your paper, to argue for your paper to be considered for publication. The issue of making unsupported claims or exaggerating the importance of the work. So those phrases like groundbreaking, the study will change the field forever, such kind of terminologies. Then overstatement, it will reduce credibility. So instead, you can use precise evidence-based wording, like our findings provide new insights into, then you provide evidence of that. This study addresses a critical gap in the literature, then you provide that gap that it is sort of addressing, and how it is addressing it. Then neglecting to proofread. At the end, your cover letter goes with grammatical or spelling errors. So if you have those kind of errors, they undermine the quality of the manuscript itself as well, right? So even if the manuscript have correct spellings, if you provide the wrong spellings in the cover letter, that will be linked to the manuscript itself. So you have to, by all means, avoid common mistakes like spellings, any misspelling that you can do, even misspelling the editor's name as well, or the title of the journal. You see, so all that can leave a very poor impression. So it's important to always check for spelling, grammar, for punctuation, and to make sure that you format your cover letter before submission. You see, that cover letter that I showed you, the journal just said they want a cover letter. Then I had to think of how can I structure it well myself. So some of those things you have to do them on your own. You can even also go online and just Google the examples of cover letters. You can see some examples that you can also maybe sort of follow in terms of how you can format it and issues of technical appearance. Overloading the letter with technical jargon or complicated language. So the cover letter, it's not a place for you to replicate the methodology, the technical details. So you have to desist from that. And you must also be cognizant of the fact that most editors, they are just generalists. It's not like they know everything, So you have to keep the language very clear and accessible for all, Then in other words, I'm saying you must just aim for simplicity, be simple. Just highlight the what and why of your research, not every technical, like now we are looking at the how that has been done, So maybe briefly, if you want, just state maybe the method, very brief. The study applied this to do this, that kind of. So it's also important that others, the issue of failing to include the required declarations as well. So if they tell you that they want you to put the conflicts of interest, then make sure that they are there. If they talk about issues of funding, ethics approval, so if you forget that can also result in unnecessary back and forth with the editorial office. In most cases, I also have, from experience, I think maybe two journals or so, they actually retain the papers. Then you must align it with their author guidelines. Then you submit. Sometimes it's maybe they can even retain it again. Then you start the resubmission process after you have fixed the what you have formatted the manuscript in line with their requirements. Then it's important that you tailor your cover letter as well to the journal. So research the journal's aims, the scope, research publications that also align with your cover letter as well. you must mention specific journal themes, special issues relevant to your work if they are applicable. If it's a part of a special issue, then mention that it's part of a special issue. You also have to refer to recent articles published in the journal to demonstrate that you are familiar with what is happening as well. So remember, this is where you are justifying for the scope, that it aligns with the scope of the journal. Then the addressing the letter to the correct editor and checking the journal guidelines for submissions as well are very, very important. If you had a prior communication with the editor, for example, pre-submission inquiry, then you have to mention it. So sometimes it's a good practice to, before you submit, then you write to the editor so that they can just check that what you are thinking, does it align with their journal or with the scope of the journal, and they consider, that kind of a publication within their journal. So that is also just that is also important. Then the issue of highlighting how your research will appeal to the journal's audience and contribute to the ongoing conversations within the scope of the journal, in terms of its mission, its objective, its aims. So it's important that your study, you must, or your manuscript, it must be framed. The contribution of the manuscript must be framed in terms of the journal's readership. You see, so that where we are talking about practitioners, policymakers, academics, or interdisciplinary scholars, emphasizing how the work contributes to the debate or filling the gaps that are relevant to the community, that the journal is serving. Issues of ethical disclosures as well. As part of some, when do you include such information like ethical disclosures, related manuscripts, reviewer, like the I think I had a question that related to that relates to this point on related manuscripts. So the ethical disclosure, any conflicts of interest, funding sources, or ethical approvals, if they are required, then you have to provide them, right? Then related manuscript as well. If there's any similar work that is under review or published elsewhere, you have to declare that. So that's that part where you say this manuscript has not been submitted elsewhere and it's not under consideration elsewhere, either for review or publication. So reviewer suggestions, if they allow you or if they ask you to provide. Data availability, if they want you to provide a data availability statement, many journals does, then you mention it. That is for transparency. If there are any special requests, if you want a rapid review or open access, if you request it to be published open access, you just have to include a brief justification. The rapid review, I don't know, because I've never submitted and say I want a rapid review. But you can also be something that can be considered as well. There's one way I once wrote that because I wanted the paper to be, I submitted it, but then I didn't receive any response. Then I wrote to the editor that I need the paper to be published within a particular time frame, and if they should let me know if maybe they are willing to consider that if it's successful, they can consider it for publication. But otherwise, then I can maybe submit somewhere else because I wanted my papers to be published. Previous rejections as well. If you are resubmitting after rejection, you briefly state how the manuscript has improved. But because that is if it was rejected with reasons. But usually, I don't really think that it's something that you have to talk that the paper was previously rejected unless you are submitting to the same journal where you submitted before. If they have rejected, then you decide to resubmit, then you can state what is it that you have done now to improve the paper itself. So this is just a sort of a checklist before you you submit, you must check if you have addressed the correct edit and journal. Is the letter concise, clear, and well structured? Does it include the manuscript title and article type? Is the significance and novelty of your work clearly stated? Have you followed journal specific instructions? Have you proofread for spelling, grammar, and clarity? Is your contact information complete and accurate? Are conflicts of interest and related submissions disclosed? And have you personalized the letter to the journal that you are submitting to? So I've already said a lot about all those aspects that I've included in the checklist. These are my concluding remarks. A cover letter, it's like I've said, it's a very critical tool to introduce your manuscript to the editor and make a positive first impression, right? So if you do not take your cover letter seriously, then also your work that is being represented by that cover letter, it's not going to be taken seriously. So you must tailor every cover letter to the journal and editor personally, then clearly and concisely communicate the significance, novelty, and relevance of your research. Follow journal guidelines and avoid common mistakes that you can make or common pitfalls. Proofread carefully to ensure professionalism and clarity. It's always important. Any work that you do, any text as an academic, you must proofread it and correct for mistakes, any language conventions that could have been violated. Then use the cover letter to complement your manuscript and support your submission. So whether you're asked or not, you can still provide the cover letter. Develop your template that you can adapt depending on the submission that you are submitting and the journal that you are submitting to. With this, I'm now handing over back to Ms. Pila so that she can lead us into the open discussion segment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel, for that presentation on writing and effective cover letters for general submissions. I think this is a very important topic for academics or for us as researchers, because we all have the aim to publish at some point, and from our masters or dissertations, we will be required to publish. So I will then open the floor for questions. Let me just enable everybody's mic so that those who want to speak can just unmute themselves and speak. Just a moment, or you alternatively can also type your question on the chat box, and then I will then read your question out to Dr. Gabriel to respond. So all the mics have been enabled. So all you have to do is just to unmute and then ask your question. And thank you, Dr. Gabriel, for also addressing the questions that were raised during the presentation. Do we have any other questions? Waiting for the questions. Let me just remind everyone to please complete the feedback survey that has been posted on the chat, so that you can give some insights on whether this workshop was useful, and also suggest some of the workshops that you want us to cover or topics that you think are important and we need to cover them. You're more than welcome to express that on the feedback survey. Do we have any other questions or comments or sharing of experiences? Okay, we do have a comment from Tebogo on the chat, and it says, so when you submit the letter, do you also attach your manuscript, or you wait for green light from the journal to upload your manuscript?
Okay, the cover letter, it's submitted with the manuscript. So if the journal requires you to do so, you include it as part of the documents that you upload. There's actually a specification where you have to upload the cover letter. But if you are not, if the journal does not sort of maybe have a specific section where you have to do that, where you have to upload, you can simply send it to the editor. The email of the editor is usually on the submission platform. Or alternatively, if there are where you put other supplementary documents, they allow you to submit, to upload other documents as well. Then you can include the cover letter as part of that. So it's not like sent separately, then it's sent together with the submission. If you submit by email, then you email them to all the cover letter as well as the manuscript itself, according to the submission processes of the journal.
Okay, thank you for that. Admire, I have noted your hand. There's also a question on the chat that says, do you have to, from Colette, says, do you have to publish with your supervisor after completion, or
to publish with your supervisor? Okay, it depends on your agreement. Okay, just a bit of clarity on the question. Do you mean on the work that you would have worked with the supervisor, or not?
On your dissertation, actually, or your thesis? So it says, do you have to publish with your supervisor after the completion of your thesis, or can you publish alone?
You can, it just depends on your agreement. I've had some papers that I did alone because of I've made sort of some, I've used some aspects of that I've drawn from my thesis, but I've had like a higher percentage was my own contributions that I've done from that. But I've also written some papers that I've published with my supervisor. So it just depends on your relationships, as well as the institution also that you graduated from as well. Because you must know that your dissertation, when it's in the repository, you don't have the authorship, the rights to that, the copyright to your dissertation. It belongs to the university, right? So even according to the guidelines of the university, you are supposed to publish before they put it on the repository. Then you can publish from it. Also, if you don't publish from it, your supervisor is allowed, I think, after 2 years, to publish from your work, but they have also to consider all the authorship, agreements in terms of that you are you are also, remember, it's your work. So as a supervisor, I mustn't just take it and say it's mine. Because you didn't publish it, or you didn't publish from your thesis. So they can publish from your thesis. It depends on your relationship. I have had papers where I include them, especially the main paper from the thesis. But then there are others that I have also written where I did not include them, but I've borrowed some aspects from my thesis.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Gabriel. Admire, you may go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, thank you so much, Doc, for the presentation. I think this is very insightful. I was following and I find it very insightful. I think these sessions are very critical for us if we are to position ourselves as better researchers in the future. I'll just ask that maybe this presentation can be shared so that maybe we can also interrogate it at our own time. Otherwise, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very insightful.
Yes, of course, Admire, we
so
will definitely share the recording and the presentation slides. Yes, Dr. Gabriel?
I just wanted to respond to Admire, and also to just, we also thank him for the appreciation, and just kindly submit, complete the feedback survey as well. We sort of, we appreciate those kind of feedback, and we want them to be stated in writing as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another hand from Collins. You may go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Gabriel. I just wanted to ask you just a follow-up question on the previous question that was being asked. So if you had done your master's and you have submitted already, now you're doing your PhD, can you still publish from your master's that you still did while you're still doing your PhD?
Yes, you can publish from your masters. Remember, okay, remember, it depends on maybe possibly how many papers can be published from it, depending on the objectives that one was having. But it's also advised that you don't have to force many papers out of that. Maybe each objective become a paper and so on. Yet you can maybe combine everything into maybe one publication. But to answer your question, you can still publish even from your master's, though you have already completed and you're now doing PhD. You can publish from that.
Okay, thank you. Just another follow-up question. Most of the times, a lot of people don't publish much from their masters because they don't get. If you have a supervisor that's not so strong, if I can, lack of a better word, you tend to not do much. But when you start attending forums like this, trainings like this, especially the one we had with Dr. Anestus, and with regards to SPSS, you realize that you have a lot of data that you might not have used in term because you didn't know the technicalities or the technical know-how on how to get certain things done. Then you now realize that there's still a lot you could have done from your masters, and you want to visit it back and also do some presentation or journal, and then that's why I'm asking. So but if I'm doing it now, I do not need to. I can use my new supervisor who for PhD as one of the co-authors instead of my previous supervisor. Is that obtainable?
It now depends on the contribution that your current supervisor has made into that. And also your agreement. Because if you are entirely just maybe taking without any other meaningful contributions or adaptations that you are doing to the work, then of course it's your work with the previous supervisor. But like I said, supervisors, they are also not fast that every paper that will come out of the dissertation, they must always be there, but the main paper, of course, you ought to include them. It just depends on your preference as well. But I haven't really seen the supervisor. Of course, you might find others who do that, but it depends on your agreement as well, like I've said. But your supervisor also deserves as well to be part of the publication if there's a meaningful contribution that they made into the output, not just merely supervising the thesis, but including the write-up of that article as well, putting it together, and other facets. They also have to play a role in that. Like we are saying that from the SPSS session that we had with Dr. Aneso, you ended up realizing that there are certain things that are actually there, the data that you did not use. So that can form other sort of new papers that, although linked to the thesis, but that will have sort of a higher sort of a contribution that is sort of not exactly the same as what is in the thesis. So in terms of that, maybe you are now analyzing maybe in a particular manner, or you are now using other statistical tests, performing other statistical tests. You are also now even updating the data, or maybe doing other things that maybe possibly you didn't do. You didn't do in the thesis. I remember writing a paper. I'm still even writing it, because I was looking at this issue of AGOA. But I looked at it in my thesis in the context of the South African Customs Union, SACU, in the USA. But now I'm writing almost on a similar sort of issue in terms of concept. But I've included all AGOA beneficiaries in that. So that becomes something that sort of diverge from what I was doing in the thesis, because even the write-up, I have to start the write-up because I'm including more countries now, so which become a totally a different sort of a focus than what I was focusing on in the PhD. So that is also something that can be done. But bottom line, you can do whatever that you want. You can publish whatever that you think can be published from your work, and it's meaningful and it's accepted for publication, then publish.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel.
All right.
It's important because people must know. A lot of times we have bittersweet relationship with past supervisors, and based on that, no one wants to cross path with people who you feel do not have your best interest at heart. So it's imperative that one understands what they do to be able to avoid the past mistakes or past experiences from a research perspective. But thank you very much for clarity to the questions I did ask.
All right, thank you. I see a question from Tafazo, where she said, does the cover letter differ when submitting to open access versus subscription-based journals, or low impact and high impact journals, or is more or less of the same, just the scope that is different? That is actually true. It's just the scope that usually differ, and also it differ from, like I said, don't use a generic one. You must tailor it to the journal that you are submitting to. But there's no cover letter for open access. There's no cover letter to say this is for the ones that are subscription based. But you tailor it to the journal. Is it possible to share the recording? Okay, yes, we'll share. All right. Ms. Pila, I think I can hand over back to you so that you can just lead us into the closing. Yes, we are almost 2 minutes before the time.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for the presentation and for also addressing all the questions that were raised. I think everybody's question has been answered. I don't see any other questions on the chat, and I don't see any other hands that are up. So I think we can now close the session. Just a reminder to those who have not yet completed the feedback survey to please do so. And definitely we will share the recording and the presentation slides so that you can also look at them during your own time. So without if there are no more questions, we can then close the session, and we can all have a great day further. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.